was 36 when Greg was diagnosed, suddenly being told your partner and father of your 2 babies is going to die. It's an impossible task to grieve your husband and look after children who are also grieving. I think that's probably the moment my parenting style changed.
In and off the floor, kids, we're going feral. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guest is a fashion writer and lecturer. She is also an author. Her book, Now Is Not the Time for Flowers, documents her experience of her husband getting a cancer diagnosis on her daughter's first birthday. It's a story of grief and love. She has 2 daughters. Today's guest is Stacey Heale. Hello.
Hi, G. Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
We're a bit giddy.
No, we are.
That's a bit weird coming off the back of a serious intro.
No, it is. It's because we've got ourselves in such a state beforehand that it is weird, isn't it? Do you know what's interesting, actually? It's because I do write and talk about quite serious, maybe somber topics.
Yeah.
People are often quite surprised when they meet me because I'm probably a bit ridiculous and I make stupid jokes and I don't take life very seriously. So I think, bringing the 2 things together can often be a bit...
Also, you talk about a subject that loads of us are really rubbish at talking about.
Yeah.
But you're also very clear on your language. One thing that I've noticed...
what do you mean?
Well, in interviews and stuff, when people say passed away...
Oh, right, no,
when you respond,
dead.
You're always very much like dead.
No, you're dead. They're dead. You are dead.
Yeah, but language is really important.
Hugely. And I really understood that. I think when I was having to deal with my daughters.
Right.
So my daughters were 5 and 7 when Greg died.
Yeah.
And I'd reached out to some different charities that deal with childhood bereavement. And the advice I was given was really, really clear, was you use the correct terminology for the illness and for the outcome. So you don't say things like, oh, Daddy had a bad tummy. And so, and he passed away. Because think about how often children have bad tummies. So if they have something wrong with their stomach, they might go, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say the word, say, cancer, it's a very, very specific illness that you can describe in age-appropriate language, but you can actually describe what that illness is, that it's not contagious, and that it's not something that they have.
Yeah.
And the same with dying, that if you talk about we've lost... If I'd said, oh, we'd lost Greg, obviously people would be like, or my children would be like, where? Where is he?
Can we just go pick him up?
Yeah, let's find him.
Yeah.
Let's just go and find him. And or gone to sleep. I don't hear that one so much now, but imagine saying that to a child. Like how terrified they would be about going to sleep or seeing anyone else they love go to sleep.
Yeah.
So, I learnt that quite early on. And
do you think it's something that you do subconsciously now? You don't even realise that you're doing it?
I do it. I do it automatically now, I think, because I feel like I've come to terms with so much to do with illness and death. And I think I've also seen how trying to sugarcoat things can really backfire with people.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm someone who would prefer just to hear the truth.
Yeah.
And just let's deal with what's actually happening rather than trying to sugarcoat something and pretend it's not happening. Do you know what? I think that comes from being a mum.
Really?
Yeah, I think because I became really aware quite quickly when Greg was diagnosed. I had, Bay, my youngest daughter, it was on her first birthday. Darlie, my elder daughter, was just about to turn 3. So they were babies, actual baby. I was still breastfeeding Bay. And I realised quite quickly that I was the one that was going to be left. And so I was the one that was going to have to deal with everything. So I didn't have the luxury of denial or sugarcoating anything because I felt a bit like I had to be one step ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
which I think is like a mum thing as well.
Yeah.
Like feeling like I need to kind of be watching 10 steps ahead.
The constant risk assessing and the protection,
Absolutely.
everything that comes, yeah.
Yeah, and doing that kind of cheerleading on the sideline of like what to tell them, what to shield them from, and that balance. And who knows if I've got it right.
Well, let's go back to your childhood first. Because although Greg did come into your life very early on, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I was 26 when I met Greg.
Ah.
I knew of him.
Oh, right.
I knew of him because he was in a band.
Yes.
He was the lead singer of the band. And I liked the band from afar. I thought he was very beautiful. I was friends with his brother, who was also in the band. Yeah. And I thought he's really different to me. He was very ethereal and an intellect. And
Did you say you're not either of those things?
No, no, and neither would he. I was always the kind of the more extrovert person and more on the go all the time. But we really clicked when we actually finally met each other. We were very unsure about each other because he just got out of a really long-term relationship.
Right.
And I'd been in a very short but horrific relationship. And also I was like, I don't think I want to go out with the singer of a band because you're going to be just of all the
jobs.
You'll know.
Yeah, I know. I know what it's like to be one of those girlfriends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was like, oh God, you're going to be on tour all the time.
And people throwing themselves at you.
And you're this really beautiful man who's got a beautiful voice. And then I realised that Greg was really, I hate to say different to other men because it sounds really cliche, but I remember seeing early on a photograph of him playing at Top of the Pops. And it was in the green room, and he was alone in a corner with big headphones on, reading a book called 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die. And I was like, what are you doing? He was like, I picked up this really great book and I'm just having such great books. And I was like, you're on Top of the Pops. What are you doing? And I think it was then that I was like, oh no, maybe I could do this. Actually, you're very lovely. So, yeah.
So can you remember finding out you were pregnant?
Oh, my God. Yeah. Yeah, I can. We got pregnant immediately.
Did you?
Like, literally immediately. I was thinking, I never thought it would happen like that. With both children, it was literally immediately. And I'd bought a pregnancy test because we'd gone for a weekend away and I was like walking around Oxford, throwing up in bushes. God. And I was like, I'm really sick. I've got to go back to the hotel and sleep. And I slept basically the entire thing. But I was like, but it feels a bit different. And I was like, do I dare? Do I dare think that it could be? And but it's only when we went back home that I did the test. And we've got a picture of me like sat on the stairs with this test. I look awful. I look like someone who has spent the past 48 hours like vomiting in a bush. That's how I look. It looks like a ghost holding like I'm almost translucent with holding this bit of plastic kind of going yay with like the tiny bit of energy that I had.
How was that first pregnancy?
Oh, really good.
Really?
Yeah, really. It was quite. It was actually. I sometimes feel a bit guilty for talking about it because it was a dreamy pregnancy. A really dreamy birth. I had the exact birth that I wanted.
Right.
It was in a tranquil pool in the middle of the New Forest where I could see wild ponies outside of the window. That's not even a joke. I've got pictures.
It's not hallucinating.
No, I've actually got pictures of me holding newborn Dali kind of by the window so I could get the horse's face in it as well. To be like, look, it's a horse.
Just all the horses at the window going, nay.
It made it this really incredible experience. And it was really interesting to go back to maybe some of the classes that I was doing. I was doing a lot of pregnancy yoga at the time. And then going back and I thought that everyone's stories would be like mine. Because I think in this group that I was in, we were all like, let's have these kind of, our bodies can do it.
Yeah.
We could just do it naturally. And we were all in that headspace. And I think mine was the only one who had worked out like that.
Yeah.
And I realised how lucky I was for it to go like that.
Yeah.
And other people had huge interventions and quite traumatic times. And that was, a wake-up call.
Well, how did your second birth differ?
Oh, my God. So quick. Weirdly, I had it in exactly the same place in the same birthing pool.
Same ponies?
Could be. But what was weird is that getting there, I remember thinking, maybe if you've gone through labour once, you go, oh, okay, I know how this goes. So in my mind, I had a really quick birth the first time. It's only 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then in my head, I was thinking, oh, okay, got some time. I remember getting to the birthing centre thinking, oh, I'm going to go have a little wander around like I did the first time. They were like, no, in the pool now. And I was like, okay. And I think I must have only been in there 5 minutes. And they were like, they took my head in my hands and said, you're going to have to push. And I was like, I've just got here.
I've not even settled yet.
Where's my cup of tea? Like, I've got to have a little go on the ball yet. I've got to have some of the little jellies that are in the fridge. Like, I've got to put my music on. Like, they were like, you're about to give birth. This baby is coming now. And that was like from beginning to end, like, being stood in my kitchen at home having a sandwich to giving birth was 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. And it's, in some ways, I listen to people saying, I had a 48-hour birth. And I'm like, whoa. Okay, 2 hours is good. But at the same time, physically actually and psychologically, it's a lot.
Yeah.
To just suddenly go, and the baby's now coming, because there's a reason
I've
why
heard of a lot of people, because
longer.
my second birth was very similar, and I would say that my body expelled Buddy. It literally just threw him out. And it's almost like, I don't know if it's the same for you, but my body took over. Like, it was just like out.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going. I was 10 steps behind.
Yeah.
What was going on? I was trying to overthink it, and it was everyone else that was saying, right, and now this is happening, and now this is happening. Yeah, it was, but again, it was fine.
I know that with Bay, you went through a tricky time emotionally after giving birth.
Yeah, she was, she was it's hard to say difficult baby, because she wasn't difficult in the sense of she wasn't doing anything wrong, but she just cried all the time and endless. And I developed quite serious postnatal depression that was very situational.
Yeah.
It was, I know sometimes people can, it can develop it through like a chemical hormone clash. But for me, it was trying to look after a toddler, trying to placate a crying baby. And also it would be that Greg, we didn't know that then, had symptoms of bowel cancer. So he was becoming more and more and more ill. Bay never stopped crying. I don't even remember Darlie in that period.
Really?
No. I think because she was so great and just kind of
she could get on with it.
Yeah, getting on. And that's really sad, actually, when I think about that. But I slowly went mad.
Yeah.
Really mad.
Can you remember telling anyone about that, how you were feeling?
Yeah, and it wasn't met with open arms. I think that I feel like maybe I was the glue that was holding a lot of things together.
Yeah.
So I think for me to say, I'm going down, I think it was easier for different people I spoke to say, oh no, you haven't got postnatal depression. But it kind of resolved itself pretty much as soon as she stopped crying.
Really?
Yeah. It was situational. It was, I just couldn't, like, a baby crying is torture. Looking back, I regret not really listening to my own intuition. And I think I felt I needed someone around me to say, you are really not coping.
Yeah.
You need some extra help.
At that point, with Greg's symptoms starting, with you not feeling great, with you having postnatal depression, did that cause friction? You know, that feeling of, I'm really, what are you know, especially if it's tummy upset, it's just kind of a bit like, not now, like, I'm experiencing this.
Yeah. Yeah. It caused huge conflict because I think both of us were in our own little worlds.
Yeah.
And I could see it then and I can see it now, and I can see two broken people trying to deal with what was literally just in front of them and also manage two children.
Yeah.
And the kind of the day-to-day of what that includes, and not know how to deal with each other. I think it was, we had a moment in that time where we actually broke up for a really small amount of time, but it was that feeling of brokenness, of we just don't know how to resolve all of this.
Yeah.
It was all so maddening with Greg becoming so ill and not being able to do anything, me being so mentally ill, and like the soundtrack of a crying baby, and also like looking after the needs of a toddler.
Yeah.
As well. I think it was just too much. Too much.
Essentially, you had 4 people who needed to be looked after. But no one to be doing that.
That's a really good way of putting it, actually, and that's how it was. And it's weird. There's certain times that I can look back on, and that tiny period of time feels quite scary to me to look back on, because I think it felt so different to how I felt in my life in terms of feeling capable or being able to think straight. Even if you're having a bad day or a bad week, there's ways that you can go for a walk, talk to a friend, anything like that. It didn't feel like that. It felt like actual madness. I remember taking I'd been walking and pacing with her, trying to get her to stop crying, and I just couldn't. I remember thinking, okay, I'll try her out in the pushchair. And I didn't even notice that it was raining. And it was when we walked down the road and both of us were drenched that I suddenly thought, oh my God, it's raining. I was that out of it. And I sat on the pavement and cried.
Scare you?
Yeah. Yeah, it really scared me. It scared me because I felt like I couldn't... It felt like I was in this tiny little rowboat that was out at sea, and there was the shore of like my old life. And I was still in my, look around and everything's still the same, but everything's different.
Yeah.
And there were certainly moments in that time that really, really scared me.
And it's scary because you think about motherhood and the message that we're told about what it is and how we all should feel, and it's amazing. So then when you're in it and suddenly you're crying on the side of the road.
Yeah.
It's such the polar opposite of what we've been fed.
Yeah, absolutely. And even what we are told about, say, postnatal depression is that, oh, you might have the baby blues afterwards. Again, it's that sugar, it's that language. It's very cute, isn't it? It's this little thing, oh, you'll just, you'll have a big cry on day 3 after you've had the baby, because that's when all your milk comes in and you'll just feel all these feelings. And again, it's a bit like when Greg was ill, Greg died. I just felt like no one told me any of this.
Yeah.
And I felt the same about postnatal depression, that those feelings of I just no one talked about that, of like screaming into pillows because you feel so alone, and like sitting in a bath of cold water to try to make yourself feel something in the middle of the night. And there's these really scary moments that I went through, feeling very alone, but it cleared just by itself. And then it's one of those things with babies, with children, it's on to the next, isn't it? It's like, oh, here's the next.
Passes.
Yeah, it passes. And when you're in
arrives.
it, you're like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. And then it moves on, and then you're on to the next thing, and you forget about how it was. And I think, I don't know, it was really important for me in the book to kind of touch back on these moments, because I didn't want to do that rose-tinted glasses thing.
And that's the thing, I really, you haven't, because you touch on the moments where you and Greg fell out. You touch on the things that irritated you about each other. So it's a very rounded view, I would say, having read it. It doesn't feel rose-tinted at all.
Yeah.
It feels like you're really letting people in.
Yeah, I think that's what I found, that through all of that time of like having young children, and then suddenly at the age of, I was 36 when Greg was diagnosed, suddenly being told your partner and father of your 2 babies is going to die. I mean, that's so huge, and I was so unprepared for all of it.
It was, on Bay's first birthday was when Greg got his diagnosis. Had he had any cancer diagnosis before that?
No, that was the diagnosis in A&E.
In A&E?
Yeah. He'd had symptoms for a long time, and he'd been seeing people for these symptoms, a gastroenterologist at the hospital. I think everyone thought it was IBS.
Yeah.
And then it went on, and then there was this spectacular night when we had to phone an ambulance because he was in so much pain. And then they started to actually go, oh, maybe we should do a scan. And then it kind of snowballed, and then it didn't stop from that point on. Yeah, and that was on Bay's, I'd set up Bay's birthday tea party. So when I came back from the hospital, after he'd been diagnosed, everything was still set up with all the balloons and Bay's birthday cake. And it was like walking into a soundstage of my old life. That literally a few hours before was my home, and then walking back into it, it actually felt like a film set.
Yeah.
And I remember I put Bay's birthday cake on the kitchen floor and let them sit and eat it with their hands. Because I was like, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. I think that's probably the moment my parenting style changed.
In and off the floor, kids were going feral.
No, do you know what I really think? I think I was one of those parents that was like, oh, I'm going to research all the best foods, and I'm going to do all the things, and now I wouldn't recognise myself now.
Really?
Yeah, not in always a great way. I think that I hold important boundaries and rules, but many I don't. I think that's the thing of like when you've come up against death in that way, and you're trying to rebuild something in a house where someone lived with you and now they're not there. It's the rules change.
Yeah.
I think.
Did Greg come home with you that day?
No. He had to stay in hospital for another 2 weeks, and I basically kind of lived there for those 2 weeks with him when we were kind of finding out more and more and more bad news. And yeah, we weren't told him. We didn't find out on that day that Greg had stage 4 cancer, which is incurable.
Yeah,
that came probably a week later.
Right.
And it was so innocuous. It's such a weird thing when these, like the worst moments and the best moments of your life are such weird moments where I remember I was sat next to Greg in this bed. We were on a ward. There's lots of other people. It's visiting hours. There's lots of people there. And I was reading a magazine to him. There's this really cheesy story about a date in an art gallery. So badly written. And I was reading it to him, doing the voices of the man and the woman. And then this consultant just walked up to us and drew the curtain and was like, I've got some really bad news. And it was like, everything changed. in that moment. And it was such this weird before and after of just being sat on an afternoon, just being stupid and doing voices, reading a story, and then being told, like, you have incurable cancer. I'm really sorry. There's nothing we can do. And then, yeah, everything changed.
I mean, words fail me in terms of, like, as being in a couple who've been together a long time, having kids. That's one of your worst nightmares, really. It's that moment of kind of being hit by a sledgehammer, you know.
It was so unthinkable. And I think it took a long while for it to really feel real. Yeah. Because it just felt, I think your body goes into a protective mode as well. I think almost immediately. It's almost like cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's very similar to birth.
Really?
In that way where your body kicks in. You're kind of floating on top of all of the chemicals that your body is producing. And I remember listening to the consultant and not listening at all. And I was just somewhere else in my head, in my subconscious, somewhere. And I think it took me a while to just living on that adrenaline, because I don't think I could really take it, because it's so obscure. Yeah. He was 39. So suddenly to be like, oh, guess what?
Yeah.
We told you that you should just, like, eat some more vegetables. Turns out that's not going to work. You've probably got 2 years.
Going into the unknown of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
For both of you.
Yeah.
Of not knowing, of being told that there's 2 years. Of not really knowing what that 2 years is going to look like.
Yeah.
As a family. And what that...
I think, well, we were never told a prognosis like that, but it was when you research it.
Okay.
Everything says, like, you'd be lucky.
Yeah.
But Greg actually lived for 5 years, which was pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah. Did it put a pressure on, well, I guess at what point did you two talk about the girls? Was there a point where you kind of had to think, how are we going to manage this?
I think that topic and that conversation was the very, very hardest thing that we never really spoke about.
Really?
Because I think that it was too painful. It was. There were so many really disgusting truths in that I think I tried to have a conversation with him once about it, and we ended up, we argued. It's one of those things where we see so often this idea of these epiphanies on deathbeds, or
the pressure that we put on those moments.
Oh my God, that people have these huge epiphanies and they're full of forgiveness and this deep thoughts and godliness, that people suddenly become these kind of spiritual beings and emanate this kind of beauty and these profound thoughts,
moments of connection that are stronger than anything that's come before.
That moment, and I was really holding out for that.
Really?
Oh God, yes, I really was. And I remember there's a lot of people around me at the time that were like, you really need to manage your expectations, not because of Greg as a person, but to do with how people die.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and that's the
problem.
We don't know.
Die.
So, and I'm friends with a brilliant woman called Anna, who is a death doula.
She's been on the podcast. Yeah,
Anna Lyons.
Yeah.
I love Anna. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We met years ago, and she was like my sounding board. That I'd have these long phone calls with her, and she said to me the most incredible advice, which I would I think should be taught to everybody, which is people die how people are in death, how they are in life. Mm-hmm. So whoever you are in your day-to-day life, chances are that is how you will be in your death. And Greg was a very introverted person. So I think that was how he was then. Yeah. And but again, it's, she was one of the big players saying to me, you really need to manage about what you think death looks like here.
Yeah.
Because she said, of all the years I have done this, I have never seen anybody have some kind of like these, what we see of the big epiphanies.
Yeah.
Deathbed epiphanies.
Did Anna help you when it came to, well, I guess actually before that, because the girls were so young when Greg was first diagnosed. For them, was it a case of you trying to keep things as normal as possible? Was it just a case of getting through? Because then you again have that thing of must make every day special, every day count, because every day's a new memory.
That is impossible. That is, again, one of the worst things that people project, I think, onto you as well, of like making memories. Got to make memories. I mean, just getting up and making breakfast is ultimately making a memory.
Yeah.
If I think back to, say, my childhood, think about getting up on a Saturday morning and having a bowl of cereal and watching some cartoons on the sofa.
Yeah.
Rugrats. The Get Along Gang. Oh my God. Like I think to that and I'm like, oh my God, the 80s. Yeah. And just dreaming.
What a time.
Yeah. So something really tiny can be a memory. And what are the most important things? And I think about my most important memories with Greg, and they're not watching him play at Glastonbury or at these like really big events. It's nothing like that. No. It's us driving in my car to the New Forest, singing our hearts out, just some cheesy songs. Mm-hmm. It's watching Jonathan Creek on a winter's night and rubbing each other's feet. It's making up really stupid names for our dog.
Yeah.
It's those are like my key things when I think about the most beautiful moments that I had with him. It's all that. It's not big fancy things.
No. Did you know Anna once Greg was diagnosed, and did she help, or was it?
No, I met her after he was diagnosed, and
did she help you sort of work out how to navigate?
Yeah, she was
with the children.
She was really useful towards the end.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah, in two different ways. Very much regulating me and my thoughts about everything, but also about how to deal with the children, and really reinforcing this idea of using the proper language, mm-hmm. supporting them, having honesty with them, because, as she said to me, they know already that you cannot have somebody dying around you who lives in the same house as you and see all the other adults in your life whispering around corners mm-hmm. and taking phone calls in the garden and crying in the bathroom, and them not know that something really quite cataclysmic is happening. Mm-hmm. And, think about when you were a kid as well, about like things going on in your own home, like the dynamics of things,
Yeah.
Adults aren't that clever.
No, you can't hide things.
No. And yeah, she was definitely the one who talked to me about this idea that you are the one who your children need to trust.
Yeah.
So you are going to have to be the one that tells them the truth. Because when all the dust settles and, currently everyone's around you, there's lots and lots of people, lots of opinions, mm-hmm. lots of thoughts. But when the dust settles Everyone else goes back to their lives, their own homes, and you are the one who they have to trust. They have to know that no matter what, you are going to tell them the truth.
Did you have to build yourself up to have certain conversations with them? And did they go as you expected? Or did you just know to go in that with no expectations of what?
I think more I had to have discussions with Greg about how we were going to do it. And I think in the end, he was the one who really wanted to tell them.
Really?
Yeah, which, I mean, God, I don't know how he did it. I don't really like that phrase. It's really glib in like difficult things when you go, oh, I don't know how you did it, because no one's got a choice. Whenever someone's done something hard, you've never had a choice. You do it because you have to, not because you're necessarily strong. You've just had no other choice. So, but I don't how those words left his mouth. I remember watching on, just feeling like this is the worst moment.
When did you know, timing-wise, that was the right time to have that conversation?
I think we'd been told that Greg had weeks left to live, and he was staying at the hospice, I think. And I think at the beginning we were thinking it was to do with just kind of some respites and pain management, and it became obvious it wasn't. And it was this tipping point of, okay, people need to know, and in particular the children. And there was actually some relief.
Really?
Even though it was easily the most horrific thing I've ever seen. Is that even, I would say that was harder than Greg actually dying, was that seeing the recognition in their eyes of what that meant. Because just knowing like that's changed everything forever now for them. And you can't take it back. And I think as a parent, you so desperately want to protect them.
Yeah.
And to know that there's nothing you could do at all to protect them from it.
And by that point, they'd lived with Greg being poorly for 5 years.
Yeah.
There's almost for them normality to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's their normal, is their dad being poorly, dad being sick.
Yeah, they didn't know any different, really.
But then the reality of that, from that point, did they see, how much did they see Greg from that conversation? Because was there a point where you both had to go, actually, this is the last time that they're going to see him? Because like we said, death is not, it's not a pretty thing.
No. I remember talking to Anna about this, actually, and she was telling me about children who were with the person when they died.
Yeah.
She told me about children going to like tend to the body after they died. My gut feeling was, knowing Greg, knowing my children, I was like, that isn't the right decision. I can't entirely put it into words why, but it was just a gut feeling of all of that was not what was going to happen. But I kind of put it to them. I didn't want to choose for them. Yeah. I was always very clear with them that they didn't have to see him, but they equally could. And that you can leave at any point. You can say what you want. You can do what you want. It's so hard. It's so hard to know. That again is one of those situations where you're like, is this the right decision? Is this the right thing to do? I kind of had to go on, I suppose, advice from like child psychologists and people who work in that area. my own knowledge of my children and just some kind of gut instinct, moment to moment of, again, like being on high alert, like looking at people's faces, reading the room, thinking, okay, is this still okay? Or do we need to change this up? And I think they both came to their own decision. One stopped before the other one.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely the right thing for her. And then I think, do you know what? I can't even remember necessarily about if we were like, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because you're right. There's a reason why when people are dying, we suddenly change to taking photos of people holding hands. And I think it's one of the big reasons is because we don't want to photograph what's at the end necessarily.
Yeah. That journey home after Greg had that conversation with them, were you aware of them processing it in any way? Did they ask more questions, or can you remember if it was something that they just...
When we went home, we told them at our house, and we dropped Greg back at the hospice. And I don't think we spoke on the way home. And then we went to bed, and it was the middle of the day.
Right.
Well, one of my daughters said, I'm just going to watch a film downstairs. Don't worry about me, I'm fine. She's like, I'm just going to go and get some snacks. Set herself up to watch a film. And me and my other daughter went and lay under the covers of my bed and didn't speak for hours. And I think there was so much to say, but also nothing to say.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't want to talk because I didn't want to... Don't know. I think that was the moment when I kicked in as the parent I am now.
Really?
Yeah, that was that moment of Greg wasn't there. It's me with them. And I have to be here in the biggest capacity and not as the parent that's going to say, can you take that out to the kitchen, please? Or get your stuff ready for school, or let's go and do a bedtime story. Not that parent. I need to be bigger than that, have a much more open heart than that. I need to find a way to communicate that is broader.
Is there also the sense of knowing it's something that you can't fix? So suddenly becoming the parent that fully acknowledges that this is a situation that we're going to sit in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the girls had to deal with as well at the same time is suddenly having a solo parent left that they recognise really quickly is not that kind of saintly figure. You know how you think of as parents when you're a kid, of like, they've got it all together, I'm totally safe. I think that's when they started to realise that wasn't necessarily the case. I tried to be, and it's an impossible task to grieve your husband and look after children who are also grieving.
Yeah.
And
do you feel like the grief started long before Greg actually died?
For me, years.
Yeah.
Years and years and years before. I was in therapy the whole time. And I was writing. That's actually how I ended up becoming a writer, is because I just started writing. I just, as a way to process everything. So I think in terms of dealing with the girls, I definitely had a lot under my belt.
Yeah.
Which I think was probably a good thing. Mm-hmm. And I was really used to talking about stuff.
Yeah.
So I think I always made it, and I still do make it very clear, there is no topic off the table at all. And I think I have a very, very honest relationship with them. Still, I'm very mindful to always be appropriate.
Yeah.
In the sense that nobody wants the mum where you're like, oh my God, I know like some really intimate details about my mum that I wish I didn't. But I want them to know that that they can always come to me, no matter what, and that I will always be on their team.
When you got the call to say that Greg had died, did you tell the girls straight away, or did you allow yourself to sit with it?
I think I must have only sat with it for a couple of minutes.
Really?
I think. It was a strange situation because we weren't at home. We were at Greg's brother's house. Greg's brother was actually with Greg when he died, and I was with his wife and her daughter. So the girls were with their cousin. So we kind of had to tell the children all together. And it was weird. There's a part in the book, actually, where you say they're all outside jumping on trampolines. Yeah.
Even though they know what's going on in a nearby house, they're kind of living in their childhood, innocence in a way.
Yeah, they're just all outside jumping. Because I remember it was really hot. It was at the end of September, but it was really hot. They were all outside on the trampoline. And I don't remember telling them, but I remember that suddenly someone started singing the theme tune to Indiana Jones, and all I could think about was, how do these children know about Indiana Jones? Like, what have they seen it? It's so weird, the things you think about and that you remember in those moments. And then I don't really remember what we did after that. Maybe your brain kicks in.
Yeah.
That thing again of your body kicking in to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And then, well, I don't know where my children went, but I went to see Greg. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, God, I just know I've got to see him. I wish I didn't feel like this, but I know I've got to. I kind of feel like I couldn't be there at the end. I thought I could do it, and I couldn't. And I don't think I feel guilt about that. I know that it was the right decision.
Yeah.
Like in that moment, I absolutely knew it. So I can't really beat myself up for a decision that I knew was right at the time. But when I went to see him, I don't know. It's like walking into another world.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like the impossibility of death. It's so abstract to look at a body and go, this is just a vessel. It's literally just like an abandoned car now. And it was
Did you really feel like he wasn't there
absolutely.
anymore?
Absolutely. It's so hard to describe because it is otherworldly to just go, he's gone. He's absolutely not in this room. And I think that's what I needed.
Yeah. To work your way through that and then have kids in the mix. So trying to show your grief or be in your grief, but also knowing that your children are there who are also grieving, allowing them space to grieve, deciding how to, navigate things like the funeral with the children there, knowing that that's also a thing for you to be able to, say goodbye to your husband. Like, there's so many different elements of it where you have to be, but you also have to action for your children.
It's a very hard game to play.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a winner to that game at all. I think especially, well, no, not especially in the early days. I think even now, it's been 2.5 years since Greg died. And I think, yeah, at the beginning and now, I think it's about holding some boundaries of, I need to put me and the girls first, and we will do what we need to do. I mean, that was very true of the funeral. I knew that they were absolutely going to be at the funeral. Not everybody agreed with that. But I knew how important.
Yeah.
That there was no doubt in my head that was what was going to happen. And we worked really hard to make sure that they were a very active part in it, that they had a little cookie stand. They made cookies. They made a cookie stand and they sold cookies to the adults for charity. Because I was terrified that they would be ignored.
Yeah.
Because adults don't know what to say to children who have just lost
it's
their
like we were
dad.
saying earlier.
Yeah,
Suddenly become, have it. You like this? Have it.
Yeah.
Have it.
Well, I think they realised that when they were selling these cookies, like people were trying to give them like £5. They were like, "You've got a £20 note in your wallet," and I think they made £1,500 from selling some probably really awful cookies that they made. So I was thinking about that, and I wanted to protect them and make sure that they felt that, because it's their dad.
Yeah.
And I think funerals are really interesting and tricky things. There is so much weird etiquette at a funeral. And I was very, very focused on the girls definitely for the first half, for the actual service. And they were sat either side of me. And I remember thinking, there's so much that control I had to lose because I was so focused on the girls. I remember turning round when I was giving the eulogy, seeing that none of my friends were in the crematorium and that there were loads of people that I didn't know there. And so that's the kind of thing, if I wasn't so focused on my children in that moment, I think I would have, I don't know, what do you do? Yeah. Someone sat in you can't get up and go, who are you? Let me see who's outside. You can swap seats with some people. Like, you can't do that. But with the funeral, I think that it kind of ended being a really great day. I know that sounds like a really strange thing to say about your husband's funeral, but it was a great day because you got to really see the love that people had, which was immense. It was a really big energy.
Yeah. You were saying earlier about the weeks and months that follow and how those people sort of disappear in the same way as a birth. You know, we're relating birth and death a lot in this chat. But suddenly you're on your own with this new experience, this new identity as a widow.
Yeah.
That must be a very strange time to suddenly be sat in it alone with no one there to kind of guide you through it in the same way. Not guide you through it, but just to sit with you in it. Yeah,
I think I'm personally really lucky in that I have a great family, really great friends. So a great
support
network that's kind of there in place. I also had already built up lots of great connections online of people who were in similar situations, which was really good. But there is nothing like the loneliness of the evenings. I think it's one thing to kind of be out having a coffee with friends and talking about it and getting things off your chest. But I think my hard times were when it was just me and the girls alone in the house and just having to start from scratch.
Really? Did you feel like that?
Yes, yeah. Literally starting from scratch of how do we do this? How do we work this? How are we going to do it when one child is crying in one room and the other child's crying downstairs and they both need me and the dog needs to be let out for a wee?
Did you allow yourself to be kind to yourself in terms of knowing that you weren't always going to get it right and that, you know...
I wouldn't have said kind, no. again, I felt like it was a little bit of a madness. It was almost a bit like that labour feeling of going, how do I do this? Like, this is actually impossible.
Yeah.
This is actually impossible, and it's all on me. I have to find a way to do this.
As the girls have got older, have there been more conversations around Greg and about what happened? Do you feel like it's something that's continuously being processed? Because as they get older, I guess they'll understand it in a different way.
Yeah, I think we definitely do have conversations with him. We have conversations about him a lot. We talk a lot about things that Greg liked or things that he didn't like or memories of him. I think my eldest daughter is definitely tapping into that place where she's kind of questioning a lot of different things. And it's really hard when they don't have a lot of memories, really. And I think that's the really sad thing. Even though it's very recent, our memories of our really, really young childhood go so quickly. Mm-hmm. And that's so sad.
Yeah.
So sad that that's the main time that they were with him. I think I'm prepared for a lot of things. I'm sure I will be blindsided hugely. I remember reading a book that was talking about grief, and it said, get ready for your children to say to you, I wish you had died instead.
Really?
Yeah. That was really helpful though, because I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. And to not take it personally.
Yeah.
Because I think and I really get this now, that I remember when Greg was kind of nearing the end, a lot of people said to me, the three of you, me and the girls, the three of you are going to be like this unbreakable bond. You're going to grow so close with each other. And I think we absolutely have. We are very close. But also, it's like a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
It's a very volatile situation. And as we've gone on in time, I've thought to myself, actually, yeah, they are close to me. They do cling to me because I'm the only parent left, and they don't feel safe in the world. But also, I'm the only parent to be angry with. I'm the only parent to rebel against.
Yeah.
So I get all of that as well. And it's a lot. So I'm kind of, navigating the reaction to the grief at all the different ages.
Yeah.
Because it comes up in different ways at different ages. And also, their personality, their age, puberty, all of this stuff. So it shifts.
Yeah.
It really, really shifts, and you've just got to be on your toes. As all parents do. I don't think that's anything that's unique to me, but
yeah,
I think that there's just this other level of things that I've got to be aware of all the time.
Yeah. Stacey, if you could write a letter on motherhood.
Oh, God.
Who would it be to, and what would you say?
I think it would be to me. Maybe to like my maybe when I was just became a mother.
Yeah.
And where you're so focused on babies and you're like, this isn't it. This isn't it.
So true.
This isn't it.
So true.
And to just be like, this is not what you think it is.
This is not the job.
No. This is like the wrapping. This is like, someone gives you a gift and you see like the wrapping and the bows and the ribbons. This is that. This isn't what's in the box. It's very different. So don't let your guard down too much.
I really enjoyed that.
Can you imagine, like me, with the horses behind me, all like in this gleeful moment in a pool of like my own shit, just like opening a letter and then being like, oh, so it changes, does it? Oh, I wouldn't want to read that.
Oh, dear. Stacey, we end the podcast with you completing 3 sentences.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is like a game.
One, it is. I like to put people on edge.
Okay.
The first one is being a mum means.
Always having to be 10 steps ahead.
Since having children, I
haven't slept.
And I'm happy when.
Oh, such a cheesy line that kind of contradicts so much that I've said in this interview. But I'm happiest when my girls are laughing.
Yeah.
Like, and when they're being silly and stupid and I'm doing that with them.
Yeah.
And that we're in this silly little world together in our house. That's when I'm happiest.
When you've gone through so much, and I think when you feel like this big thing is going to shape your children's future and suck out their innocence, and to see them in those moments, to kind of go,
it feels bigger.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about all of this. It feels like I've had maybe a layer of skin taken off, so that when times are hard, I feel it more acutely, like rain on you. But then you can also feel the warmth of the sun more acutely. So when times are good, it just feels like euphoria.
Yeah.
Because you can feel it more deeply.
That makes perfect sense. Stacey, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, G. Thank you so much.
I've loved this chat. Thank you.
Me too.